Watching the English newscast on Future Television. I'm Yumna Naufal, and these are today's top stories. Maronite Patriarch Shararai holds a meeting with President Michel Aoun a day after the latter paid him a protocol visit in Kirkuk. Syrian aircraft and artillery pound rebel-held areas of Aleppo as Damascus and Moscow intensify a new offensive. And US-backed Iraqi troops expand their foothold on the eastern side of ISIS's Mosul as the group pledges to mount more suicide attacks. Maronite Patriarch Shararai held a meeting with President Michel Aoun one day after the latter paid him a protocol visit in Kirkuk. He said he was here to congratulate the president on the occasion of Independence Day, which is Tuesday, which regained its luster and meaning in the presence of Aoun, the president, the basis of the country's dignity. The patriarch is to head to Rome. The newly elected president made the first official visit Thursday, and it was to Kirkuk, where he met with the patriarch. Now, Arai is expected in Rome on Independence Day, which the Lebanese mark on November 22nd. This comes after Aoun was elected president on October 31st, ending a political vacuum that prolonged for over 2.5 years. President Michel Aoun did not approve the draft lineup of a new cabinet submitted to him by Prime Minister-designate Saad Hariri, contrary to claims that alleged otherwise, which spoils the hopes of a near-final agreement on the shape of the new government. These are according to media reports and comes as ambassador of the Netherlands to Lebanon, Her Excellency Mrs. Somsen Hester paid a visit to the PM-designate.
I was very happy that I could meet the Prime Minister-designate just now. It's, I think, very important to hear that the developments are going in the right direction. It's already extremely positive that we have a president now in Lebanon. I've been here since 2013, and I think this is one of the most positive developments. It's positive because the focus will be much more now on the national Lebanese problems and the problems that are there for the people when it comes to electricity, when it comes to the garbage crisis, public education and public health. And these were issues that we touched upon with Prime Minister-designate Saad Hariri. And I'm really looking forward to hearing the announcement of a government as soon as possible. And then to see how developments can be taken forward up to the general elections for the parliament next year. And I think that would be really the time when all the institutions are back on track and Lebanon can work on its future again. Thank you very much.
Kataib Party Chief MP Sami Jmail pledged to support Michel Aoun in the beginning of his presidential tenure while urging him to improve the political system. He was quoted as saying, "We will not bargain on our principles, neither for the presidential election nor for a ministerial seat or a parliamentary vote." He said this after meeting Foreign Minister Jabran Basil, explaining why the Kataib did not vote for Aoun in the presidential election. He also reiterated that what happened in the presidential elections gave Hezbollah the power to choose the president and in the future as well. Renewing his pledge to cooperate with the new president, Jmail said that they now have a president and it is their duty to give him a chance. Syrian aircraft and artillery pounded rebel-held areas of Aleppo as Damascus and its ally Moscow intensify a renewed offensive against the rebels. It is the fourth straight day of bombing since Russia declared an end to a month-long humanitarian pause on Tuesday. The more than 250,000 civilians living under siege in the rebel-held city spend the night in basements and bomb shelters after one of the most intense bombardments of the renewed offensive. Barrel bombs and other ordnance rained down until midnight, only to resume in the early hours. The bombardment comes as government troops press an assault on the southern neighborhood of Sheikh Said, which they briefly entered before being pushed back by rebel fighters. And on to Iraq, where U.S.-backed troops expanded their foothold on the eastern side of ISIS's stronghold of Mosul, as the group is pledging to mount more suicide attacks on their offensive to retake the city. The elite counter-terrorism service stormed the Tahrir district on the northeastern edge of Mosul, the last major city under control of the Sunni hardline group in Iraq. Militants have been steadily retreating from areas around Mosul into the city since the battle started on October 17th with air and ground support from a U.S.-led coalition. Now, as the offensive enters its second month, Iraqi government forces are still fighting in about 50 neighborhoods of Mosul. Coming up next, more world headlines when we return. Stay with us. Welcome back. A poll shows that former French Prime Minister François Fillon was seen as the winner of a final debate ahead of a vote which will decide who gets the Conservatives' candidacy in next year's presidential election in France. The victory marks a fresh upset for favorite Alain Juppé. Juppé, 71 years old, has been ahead of the polls for months now. But more recently, he has been struggling to fire up voters and has this week been losing some ground to his chief rival, former President Nicolas Sarkozy, as well as Fillon. Whoever wins the two-round voting primaries on November 20th and November 27th has a strong chance of becoming France's next president. Socialist President François Hollande's deep unpopularity and divisions on the left means polls forecast his party will not feature in the eventual two-person runoff. Instead, it's thought that the Conservative candidate will face far-right leader Marine Le Pen in the presidential elections in 2017. Fillon, who saw his ratings start rising 1 week ago, was perceived as the most convincing in the debate by 39% and versus 26% for Sarkozy and 25% for Alain Juppé. Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe described Donald Trump as a trustworthy leader after meeting the U.S. president-elect to get clarity on statements Trump had made while campaigning that had caused concern about the possible alliance. Trump, in a brief post on his Facebook page accompanied by a photo of the two men, said it was a pleasure to have Prime Minister Shinzo Abe stop by my home and begin a great friendship. The location tag on the photo was Trump Tower, New York. The hastily arranged meeting was an attempt to smooth relations following Trump's campaign rhetoric that cast doubt on long-standing U.S. alliances. Japan's leadership has been nervous about the future of an alliance that is core to Tokyo's diplomacy and security. Trump had fanned worries in Tokyo and beyond with comments on the possibility of Japan acquiring nuclear arms, demands that allies pay more for keeping U.S. forces on their soil or face their possible withdrawal. And U.S. President Barack Obama called Chancellor Angela Merkel one of his most important partners and somebody he could always trust in a video posted to German government social media. This is his last trip as President of the United States.
Chancellor Merkel has been one of my most important partners throughout my presidency. She has characteristics that I think have served not just Germany well, but Europe and the world well. She's honest, she's strong, she does her homework and knows the issues. She is principled and reflects, I think, the bonds that Americans and Germans share in terms of democracy and open markets and the desire to make sure that human rights and personal dignity are respected, not just in our countries but around the world. She was strong and decisive and extremely helpful in persuading the rest of Europe to take the necessary steps to strengthen our financial system and make sure that we got on the path of recovery. But she's also been a strong partner in a whole range of international forums, whether it's the support that the German people and armed forces have provided in Afghanistan, where we're trying to give them an opportunity to provide for their own security and rebuild after decades of war, and to make sure that the terrorist threat does not reemerge there, to her work on humanitarian issues and development issues in places like Africa. Across the board, she's always been somebody I can trust and somebody who I think deeply believes in the role that Germany can play and that all wealthy nations can play in not only making our countries better, but also making the world better.
Hollywood star Tom Hanks said he was glad and fortunate to be selected as a recipient of the 2016 Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian honor in the United States. President Barack Obama will present awardees including rocker Bruce Springsteen, Motown soul singer Diana Ross, former basketball champion Michael Jordan, and actor Robert De Niro with their medals at a White House ceremony on November 22nd.
Is that saying no good deed goes unpunished? And in the case of aviation incidents, no good deeds goes unexamined or uninvestigated. And what Sully went through post that instinctive act of that took place over 208 seconds resulted in, you know, it wasn't exactly a prosecutorial process, but it was one where he had to explain again and again and again everything from the evidence of 40-odd years as an aviator, as well as, you know, what he had had for dinner the night before, if that could have possibly have affected what happened on the flight. Why did they're always asking the question, tell us again why a $110 million airplane landed in the water? Explain that again to us. And he had to, and both he and Jeff Skiles, the co-pilot, had no idea if they were going to be found responsible somehow for the loss of that airplane. And if that had happened, his life as he knew it would have been over, and he would have been an outcast in his chosen field. That's a pressure that did not leave him for the better part of 2 years. Oh yeah, that's extraordinary. Yeah, it's quite a group of people. I mean, everybody from Admiral Grace Potter to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Lauren Michaels and myself. And look, I'm just a dumb kid from Oakland, California. I don't know how any of this happened, but I'm glad that I'm very fortunate that I've been able to work enough that it rates such a nod from such a man as the President of the United States.
And to be one of Obama's last recipients, how does that feel?
Well, bittersweet, because, you know, we have term limits. You know, if he was running again, I would have voted for another 4 years. It ends up being so much of the what I think is so much of the promise of the United States. Look, I'm an American. There's no getting around it. I've been able to enjoy the great benefits of my country and my upbringing. And if a guy like me, I know it sounds ridiculous, I know, but if I was just a guy from Birmingham and I found myself being an OBE or knighted by the Queen, I'd feel the same way. What a place where a guy like me can end up, taking a knee before Her Majesty. Oh well, it's been bumped to 2018, I think now, but we've already started recording, so it's in the works.
Can you give us a little bit of Woody?
This is how Woody speaks right now. He doesn't have any other voice but mine. All the movies are made in such tiny increments over long periods of time. We go into the recording studio and there's a prepared text, and you go off that text and you keep experimenting with it, and then they take what you've recorded and they put it through another ringer of creativity and alteration. So I'm like you, I can't wait to see what they've got Woody up to.
This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now for a reminder of our headlines. Maronite Patriarch Shaddai holds a meeting with President Michel Aoun a day after the latter paid him a protocol visit in Kirkuk. Syrian aircraft pounds rebel-held areas of Aleppo as Damascus and Moscow intensify a renewed offensive against the rebels. And US-backed Iraqi troops expand their foothold on ISIS's Mosul as the group is pledging more suicide attacks in their offensive. Serge Berberi is next with the French News Bulletin. Stay tuned and we'll see you again tomorrow. Have a good weekend.